Welcome to Half-Life 2, Episode 1. We received a great deal of positive feedback on the commentary track in The Lost Coast, and so we've included the same feature in this episode. To listen to a commentary node, put your crosshair over the floating commentary symbol and press your Use key. To stop a commentary node, put your crosshair over the rotating node and press the Use key again. Some commentary nodes may take control of the game in order to show something to you. In these cases, simply press your Use key again to stop the commentary. With episodic content, we are hoping to release games much more frequently than has been possible with the monolithic development schedules of the past. Game developers and game customers have been wanting to try this for years. Please let me know what you think after you've had a chance to play this, our latest installment in the ongoing adventures of Gordon Freeman. I can be reached at gayben@valvesoftware.com. Thanks, and have fun.
Tell me, Dr. Freeman, if you can. You have destroyed so much. What is it exactly that you have created? Can you name even one thing? I thought not.
We used an upgrade of the refract shader from Half-Life 2 to make the Vortex warp into the intro. The major difference is that this time we are only refracting pixels that come from the Vortex themselves. We placed a large sheet of refractive geometry in front of each Vortex to achieve this effect.
This intro sequence establishes some important initial pieces of Episode 1's story and setting. Our earlier versions of the intro sequence were heavy on graphic effects and relatively light on storytelling. When we showed those early versions to playtesters, they thought it was cool, but rarely had any idea what was supposed to be happening. We went through several iterations, each time simplifying the editing and tightening up the effects. We eventually arrived at a good middle ground between the sort of psychedelic look we were shooting for and basic comprehension of what was actually taking place.
We'll see about that.
He has to be somewhere around here. Gotta be close. Just any luck with that dog? Dog, I think I found something. Drop what you're doing and help me over here. Oh my God! Gordon! I was so worried. Hey, the gravity gun. Give it to him, dog. There, Gordon. Dog's happy to see you, I can tell. Okay, dog. Go get the monitor set up so we can check in with my dad. He must be worried sick about us. He was so sure I wouldn't find you here. Citadel's really coming apart. I still don't know how we got out of there. The last thing I remember is rain falling. Huge explosion, and then I heard vortigons. Next thing I knew, Dog was digging me out of the rubble. It's all so strange. Well, we should... It's my dad. We've been trying to reach him for hours.
Players love Dog,
Wait till he hears
so we made sure that he was the first thing you see when you wake up in Episode 1. We also wanted players to get a glimpse of the crippled Citadel. When Dog lifts you out of the rubble, it's one of the few instances in the game when we take control of the player's view. This allowed us to ensure the player's view lingered briefly on the Citadel before Dog set them down.
Since we never take control away from the players, it can be a real pain to get them to notice important environmental events. It's a constant design challenge for us. The Citadel will be erupting in a massive light show that took 10 of us 2 months to orchestrate, and if we're not careful, the player will end up facing the other direction staring at a tire. In this case, to establish that the Citadel is coming apart at the seams, we wanted the player to notice the debris falling off of it. We used a pretty straightforward method here. Alyx explicitly mentions the Citadel while pointing at it. Like most of these solutions, it's not foolproof, but it has a high success rate.
The Citadel is supposed to be a building of unprecedented scale. So out of scale with the rest of the world, in fact, that we couldn't render it without our 3D skybox technology. This technology allows us to build the Citadel as a 1/16th scale model off in an unreachable corner of the map, and seamlessly merge it into the scene. We also use this technology to create the illusion of vast spaces and distant horizons.
This area was redesigned several times in order to keep the player in this space while Alyx delivers some exposition. As much as we hated to do it, the final solution was to have Alyx climb out while the player looks for an alternate route. We portray Alyx as more athletic and nimble than Gordon, so players shouldn't get too irritated by the fact that she can get to places they can't. Honestly, we're not especially happy with this crutch, but it's a trade-off we sometimes have to make so that we can get Alyx out of the way of interesting player challenges.
Dad, are you there?
Alyx, come in.
Hold on a sec, there's so much interference. Hey dog, give me a hand with this. Okay, little to the right. There we go, hold it there. We got it. Dad.
Alyx, where are you? Oh, please, God, tell me you're out of the city.
Well, not quite yet.
What?
But listen, Dad, we found him.
You found Gordon? I don't believe it. But listen, you two have to get out of the city. The Citadel could blow at any moment.
There's no question that it will, I'm afraid. Our remote sensors indicate the process is accelerating toward a dark energy flare. Anyone left in the vicinity will be subjected to energetic events whose effects are beyond my powers of speculation. The ravages to cellular material are unimaginable.
Stop!
Dad?
Oh dear, Eli, I'm sorry, but surely there's no need for undue alarm. Alyx is well out of harm's way by now.
Well, actually, we're still at the Citadel.
What? Oh dear, but there's really no time. The core is exceedingly close to collapse. Why, there's no way to get far enough without first... Well, nothing short of a direct intervention in the core could possibly retard the reaction.
You mean going in?
Into the core, yes. But it's far too dangerous to consider. The chamber will be bathed in radiation.
Well, you do have the hazard suit. If we found a way into the Citadel, it's possible we
Alyx,
could...
no!
But Dad...
Izzy, talk some sense into her.
I'm sorry, Eli, but I don't see any other way. It would help us evacuate more citizens.
We can do this, Dad.
Okay, Alyx, okay, just promise me. Promise me that you won't take a single unnecessary risk.
I promise. I love you.
I love you too, baby. I'll be praying for you.
Don't worry. I'll see you soon. Yeah. Don't worry. Let's see if we can find a way into the Citadel from somewhere along the rim.
Right off the bat, we needed to hammer home some story points, reintroduce the cast of characters, and explain the player's immediate goal. It was a pretty intimidating chunk of non-interactive exposition. We generally approach these scenes by writing way too much, and then through constant playtesting, trimming the scene to more manageable levels. But in this case, even after some heroic pruning, the opening scene still felt too long. We ended up splitting the introductory sequence into 3 scenes, separated by some gravity gun puzzle solving, and then a dramatic walk across a crumbling ledge.
When we designed the Half-Life 2 Facial System back in 2000, our goal was to get a natural-looking performance at a moderate distance. Given our real-time polygon and texture budgets, we chose fairly reserved or constrained performances over ever having the actors' faces get into a bad-looking or unnatural expression. For Episode 1, we wanted to extend the character's facial system to support more intense performances with a wider range of facial expressions that would hold up better at close range. These facial improvements included increasing the detail around the eyes and mouth, increasing the number of facial shape targets, think of these as movements of muscle groups, by about 50%, rewriting the rules that control how these shapes blend, and increasing the intensity of many of our existing shapes. In addition, we added support for controlling the amplitude of the facial movement for lip sync animation, which let us dampen or amplify the mouth shapes based on the volume or intensity of the dialogue.
Monitor scenes are especially difficult to make interesting, since they tend to involve literally just talking heads. By interweaving critical expository information, like how dangerous the Citadel has become, with some dramatic character interactions between Alyx, Eli, and Dr. Kleiner, we were able to convert a potential liability into one of the strongest scenes in the game. A great way to illustrate characters' relationships to each other is to have one of the characters in danger and show the other's reactions to it, which is what this scene is all about.
Sometimes we need to keep the player in an area so that we can deliver some critical dialogue or run an important sequence of events. In these cases, we temporarily block the player's path using what we call a gate. These gates generally take the form of some obstacle that can only be removed or opened by some character or event. In this case, the obstacle is a crashed gunship that can only be moved out of the way by Dog. Though the final scene looks pretty straightforward, a lot of care had to be taken to make sure that Dog hit his marks and played his sequences without trampling and damaging the player.
Alyx travels through much of Episode 1 with the player, and consequently passes through a wider variety of lighting conditions than she did in Half-Life 2. This meant that we had to improve the quality of the lighting algorithms used on Alyx to look realistic in any situation, from the eerie hallways of the Citadel to the streets of City 17 at sunset. For this episode, we added a specular lighting term to the shaders used on Alyx, which provides a realistic shiny look to her skin, her leather jacket, and even her teeth. In these new lighting calculations, we chose to specifically emphasize bright highlights caused by illumination from grazing angles. This type of lighting, also referred to as rim lighting, is particularly dramatic when coming from low-angle light sources such as this bright sunset. You'll also note that the rim lighting is further enhanced by our high dynamic range post-processing, which causes the specular highlights to bloom in a striking and dramatic fashion. We have found that the move to an episodic development cycle allows us to take advantage of the fast pace of graphics hardware innovation by incrementally adding new features, such as Alyx's new lighting techniques, to the source engine with each new episode.
This ledge is a really tricky spot for NPCs to navigate. While we wanted Alyx to be able to maneuver dynamically through any complex environment, in certain navigation situations we're faced with a trade-off between flexibility and visual quality. In this particular case, she navigates the ledge with a combination of AI and scripted animations. We've continued to evolve the systems of Half-Life 2 whereby characters move fluidly through dynamic AI and scripted navigation, but ultimately what matters most is how it looks to the player.
Our games are created by design collectives that we call cabals. When the idea to have you and Alyx sit in a van and then have Dog toss it across the gorge was first suggested during a cabal meeting, everyone thought it was funny, and then we moved on to more serious solutions for the gorge crossing. As the design progressed though, we kept coming back to the van idea, and eventually everyone agreed that we should give it a try. Even though the idea was kind of outrageous, it satisfied some key goals we had for the scene. Alyx and the player get across the impassable gorge, and Dog is able to play a key role in the mission, while also plausibly getting left behind. There were still some problems to solve though. Attaching animated models to the van was tricky, making sure the van didn't kill the player took some thought, and it took a number of tries before we were able to really illuminate Dog's thinking, as he went from testing his idea with chunks of debris to finally presenting the plan to Alyx. Ultimately, we were able to create a scene that solved some tricky game design issues, provided an intimate view of the relationship between Alyx and Dog, and delivered a surprising and visceral entrance to the Citadel.
But how? What about... Dog? Dog, where are you going? Was it something I said? Huh? Dog, what are you... I think Dog needs a few bolts tightened.
It's really important to us to create scenes that showcase strong relationships between the characters. The relationship between Alyx and Dog seems to be especially satisfying to players. In the scene leading up to the van toss, we had a bug before the animation was complete, where Dog's head would shake as he looked back at Alyx. In a happy accident, his head shook right after she asked him, "You did do the math, right?"
You're not serious.
In playtests, players thought this was intentional and always laughed. Because of that, we worked it into the animation, and it ended up being a terrific little moment between Dog and Alyx.
Well, Gordon, Unless you have a better suggestion. He is a robot. He's done the math.
I want you to get out of here as fast as you can. Go find Dad. We'll catch up, don't worry. All right. I'll miss you too. Now don't worry about me. I'll see you soon.
Brace yourself.
Okay, dog, let's do it. Before I change my... Okay. Careful, hold on. Whoa.
Phew. Whew. Good throw, dog.
Now go, boy, go on. You'll be fine, just...
Uh-oh. What now? Whoa. Hold on. Phew. All right, let's get off before the next ride starts.
To convey a sense of urgency, we originally designed Alyx to nag the player pretty frequently. She'd say things like, "Hurry up and keep moving." Whether or not this created a sense of urgency is debatable, but after about 3 minutes of this, the one thing it definitely did was make the player hate Alyx. This was one of the observations that eventually led us to switch Alyx from generally leading the players To convey a sense of urgency, we originally designed Alyx to nag the player pretty frequently. She'd say things like, "Hurry up and keep moving." Whether or not this created a sense of urgency is
This is unbelievable.
We populate our environments with spots where players can take a break to look out over an expanse of cool scenery. We call these vistas. This particular vista was designed to give anyone familiar with the Citadel interior from Half-Life 2 a good view of what it looks like now that everything's falling apart. The pods that are sliding off their track and into the abyss really sell the idea that the Citadel is half abandoned and in chaos.
In an early version of this map, Alyx led the player through the whole thing. To make Alyx seem less omniscient, we had her access a console here to get her bearings. It exploded, which helped drive home the point that the Citadel was in bad shape, but generally, it was a long pause in the action without a lot of payoff. After we made the high-level decision to have Alyx follow the player, this entire scene became irrelevant, and we happily cut the whole thing.
Bother us if we leave them alone. I'll just disable this field and... Damn, I can't get this down. Something... It's that stalker. He's holding it from the other side. We don't have time to look for another way around. How are we gonna get through here? Roller mines. They could help us get out of here. Can you find where those roller mines are going? I've got an idea how to use one here.
In a good puzzle, the player is presented with an overall goal, and then faces a number of smaller challenges in pursuit of that goal.
In the case of the Stalker Puzzle, we start with, how do I open the door? From there, we move to, how do I get to the Stalker? Then, how do I get to the roller mines? How do I get the roller mine back to Alyx? And finally, how do I use the roller mine to disable the Stalker?
Training is one of the fundamental tenets of our design philosophy. Before the player is required to utilize some new game mechanic, or new weapon, or face a new monster under pressure in a dangerous situation, we always introduce the concept in a relatively calm, but ideally still entertaining way. This entire scene teaches the player that Alyx can convert roller mines so that they can be used as a friendly weapon. Later, the player is required to do this in more pressing circumstances, but at this point, everything's still pretty calm. In the original design, the player retrieved the roller mine from a dispenser and used it to take out a Combine soldier who was holding the field from the other side. Eventually, we scrapped that idea and combined the roller mine training with some Stalker exposition that originally occurred in a separate scene.
Reset the targeting system on these things. A little extra juice in the right spot, and it's on our side. I'll hold it out where I can work on it. There it is. It's a lot more unstable, but it should last long enough to take out the Stalkers. Through now. Let's go.
We wanted to create an atmosphere of urgency in the Citadel, with Alyx and the player focused on getting to the core to stop the impending collapse. Initially, we tried to reflect that urgency through Alyx's behavior and acting. This proved to be unsustainable, however. If the player didn't choose to advance, Alyx eventually ran out of lines or animations and was forced into her very non-urgent idle states. We found that the best approach was for Alyx to have such implicit trust in and sympathy with the player that she's always content to proceed at whatever pace the player chooses. Once we adopted this principle, lines where Alyx sounded impatient or frustrated with the pace of progress quickly stood out and were cut.
We created a new Citadel destruction set of broken Combine panels and prefabs for the interior spaces to help make the Citadel look like it was on the verge of exploding. We also introduced a strong ambient orange color to help sell the fact that the Citadel was in a much different state from the last time the player passed through. The orange atmosphere was justified due to all the fires and smoke inside the Citadel.
Well, that was random. Talk about unstable.
The primary goal of the first Citadel map is to communicate to players that the Citadel is falling apart. The Vortex was a late addition to the map, in an effort to beef up the idea that the Citadel was becoming a very dangerous place. We had particular difficulty in conveying the danger zone here. In early playtests, players thought that the entire bridge was dangerous at all times. Some additional effects work helped let players know where the dangerous areas were. We would have loved to base more gameplay on this Vortex idea, but we just didn't have the time.
We revealed the pod here to let players see it up close. At the same time, we didn't want players to get too good a look at what's inside. An old version of the scene had the pod simply hanging from the ceiling. It would burst open and then charge up your gravity gun, but not do much else. The current scene gives us a much more dramatic reveal of the pod, and an opportunity to introduce the mind blasts it's capable of emitting. Though they don't play a large role in Episode 1, these guys were a functional requirement of Episode 2, which meant we effectively had to ship a piece of that episode early.
What the hell?
We decided this space needed to look unique and appear to have more significance than the rest of the Citadel areas the player had already traveled through, while at the same time feeling as though it was still made with combined technology. This room introduces a story point that plays a big role in Episode 2, so the player has to feel like something important is going on in here. A different fog setting as well as different light styles and configurations helped achieve this. The red lighting is a good contrast to the traditional blue-green colors of the Citadel.
It's important that the player has some empathy for Alyx, rather than seeing her as just a bullet-spitting robot. The brief recovery scene after the pod mind attack reminds the player that Alyx is also affected by events in the world.
Gordon? What's going on in there?
Confiscation field engaged.
Hey, it's doing something to the gravity gun. It looks like it did in Brain's portal reactor. I'd say their security device backfired.
Diagnose. Detect.
The light bridge ball sockets are a clear example of our training approach to new gameplay elements. We train the players with a leading example, confirm they understand the concept, then switch up the problem set and make them use it in a new way. The first bridge shows players the solution, the second one confirms they understand it, and the third, knowing they understand the gameplay mechanic, challenges them in a new way using that mechanism.
Nice thinking. Soldiers!
Impending Destruction is a recurring theme in the city. From story, mood, and visual standpoints, this changes the city. The destruction needed to feel natural rather than entirely scripted upon the player's actions. Not showing the destructive events dynamically makes the player assume the level of damage is static. However, if the events are too obviously triggered by player movement, the destruction feels too scripted. We found the solution was to give players glimpses of things that were happening at the periphery of the player space, as well as in their immediate vicinity, to give the feeling that stuff is happening whether the player is present or not. Having trained the player that balls fit into sockets, we wanted to introduce a puzzle where the question was how to get the ball into the socket. The puzzle we came up with involved a socket with an object blocking it, so that the player would have to ricochet a ball into place. This sounded simple until we actually tried to implement it. If we made the covering opaque, playtesters didn't realize that there was a socket behind it. When we made it translucent, they often didn't see it was there, and were confused when their shot bounced off. Making it movable was a red herring, making people think that they could actually knock it away. A couple of subtle art changes helped. We added some more prominent shadowing and made the glass panel flash when it was hit with a ball. Some playtesters consistently searched for a position to get a direct shot, which we didn't discourage as an alternate solution.
There are some little practical details that take a surprising amount of time and testing to get just right. For instance, it took us many playtests to figure out just how fast Alyx should move. It turns out that her falling behavior looks and feels the best when she's moving faster than the player's normal speed, but slower than the player's sprint speed.
This dropship scene was another case where we had to be clever about drawing the player's attention to something cool that was about to happen, which the player could easily miss if they weren't looking in the right direction. We used a solitary soldier firing at the player to draw their attention to where the dropship climbs into view. Once the player notices the dropship, there's a good chance they'll watch it until the payoff when it crashes.
Did you see that?
This is where some player training pays off. After earlier training players on the use of ball sockets, they get a sort of live fire test here starting the elevator. This is the beginning of the level's puzzle arc, where a basic gameplay mechanic is made increasingly more complex by layering other puzzle elements on it.
Watch out!
The first puzzle only requires that the player find a combine ball and put it in the socket.
Here comes more! Heads up! What's wrong with this lift? Are we going again? Up there! Start her up again, Gordon. Do what you did last time. What's going on? Good job.
Here we're presenting the player with a now familiar ball socket challenge, but we're also bridging into some new training, showing the player that stalkers can destroy the combine energy balls.
I think I see a stop down below. Let's get off there and see where it leads. Look out! Run! Oh, that was close.
Late in development, we changed the art for these doors so that players understood they were entering the core area. It turned out that having Alyx talk about the area wasn't enough to give playtesters the sense that they'd finally arrived at the core.
This could be it, Gordon. Why are they hanging around here? It looks like they were deliberately trying to blow the reactor. But why?
This is another key Vista, this time showing the core.
Oh my god.
It's a visual payoff for the player's success in getting here, and simultaneously, a way to present the player with a view of the next challenge.
Let's see if we can find a way through the control room.
Creating a believable, interesting relationship between Gordon and Alyx is made a lot tougher by the fact that Gordon never talks. This elevator scene presented a nice little opportunity to have Alyx express some emotion in a situation where Gordon isn't really in a position to respond.
These readings are off the chart. I hope it's not too late to re-engage the containment field. Good thing you know what you're doing. Well, here's your elevator. Gordon, I wish there was something else I could do to help. Hurry back.
The core design posed a lot of difficult challenges. Generally speaking, if the gameplay in a particular map isn't working, we can simply cut the entire area. This wasn't true of the core, because we knew it was critical to the story. On top of that, designing Citadel gameplay is often a bigger challenge than working out areas in City 17, largely because Citadel levels have a narrow set of gameplay tools. There are less enemy types available, and the player is usually only armed with a gravity gun. Because of this, we had to go through many iterations of the core design. One of the earlier prototypes was a kind of futuristic version of Operation, where players had to use the gravity gun to cleanly manipulate rods into slots in the core. That didn't work, partly because playtesters found that their view was obstructed by the rods, which made it frustratingly difficult to manipulate them with any kind of precision. We prototyped, playtested, and abandoned several other designs until we finally arrived at one that was fun, while still being challenging enough to give players the sense that they'd accomplished a significant goal.
The difference between skill levels isn't just a matter of damage dealt and received. For instance, in easy mode, we increase the length of time a combine ball survives before exploding, putting less pressure on the player to get the ball into a socket.
Ball tubes are an example of us working within our available toolkit to create a puzzle around a recognized concept. As a physical navigation puzzle, it's different from what the player has experienced before, and it's challenging while not being a binary succeed or fail situation. There are a number of ways to approach this puzzle. In addition to simply dodging, jumping, or ducking the balls, the player can grab or deflect them with his gravity gun, or pick up the hatch and use it as a shield to block the incoming barrage.
The Combine core was another new space that needed to stand out from the rest of the environment. We wanted the core to look hot and dangerous, but still be distinct from the fires and the cool blues of the rest of the Citadel. The core became the primary light source in this space, and in conjunction with the white set of Combine materials, we created an extreme contrast to the normally dark values of the Citadel metals.
The core sphere was one of the last special effects that we finished. To achieve this effect, the core uses animated textures, flow maps, normal map refraction and specularity, as well as volumetric particulate matter rendering, which takes advantage of the core being a sphere.
The higher contrast white Combine motif of the core sets it apart from the rest of the Citadel and heightens its importance within the visual style of Combine aesthetics. It also helps enhance the perception of heat and radiation in the space.
The core was a central element of this part of the game, and as much as possible, we wanted to constantly reinforce its importance. Zigzagging through the space in 3 dimensions while navigating a variety of challenges let us present a few different visual and gameplay perspectives on the same space. By letting the player see the core from a bunch of different angles, we were able to give them a real sense of its scale.
The second ball tube presents a variation of the pattern the player learned in the first ball tube. While the first tube can be crossed slowly, by crouching and maneuvering your way up, the second ratchets up the pace, requiring a quicker, more responsive approach. The goal of this logic puzzle isn't figuring out that you need to put balls in batteries. It's coming to the realization that, by filling all of them, you've denied yourself an exit, and that you have to desocket one, climb on the lift, and then resocket it. Sparks guide the player to the source of the balls, which happens to be the tube they just passed through.
Monitor scenes, such as this video transmission from Dr. Mossman, aren't simply pre-rendered video. These scenes actually unfold live in an inaccessible section of the map, while being projected onto the monitor screen. Here's Dr. Mossman in the small Arctic base set. It's not nearly as far away from the Citadel's core control room as it appears to be in the level.
The containment system's back in place. It won't last forever, but at least we bought a little time. While you were in there, I did some poking around in the control data. They were trying to start a chain reaction, all right, but destroying the Citadel is just a side effect. Since we took out Brain's reactor, this is the only way they have to send a transmission packet back to wherever they came from. I can't tell what the packet contains, but it's important enough that they're willing to sacrifice the whole Citadel to send it off. We need to get it back to my dad and Dr. Kleiner at the outpost right away. I've been pulling down a copy. Whatever it is, I have a feeling it's bad news for all of us. There's something else. It's Judith. Take a look.
I'm fairly sure I've pinned down the location of the project. It's hard to say how much of it might have survived intact or whether there's anything remaining that could compromise our work if it were discovered by the Combine. We'll need to take a close look at it, of course, but I should be able to give a better opinion within a few hours. If the site is where we think it is, then it should be no more than... I'm gonna cut this short. We may have been spotted.
Where the hell is she? She's in serious trouble. We need to get this and the transmission packet to my dad. He'll know what to do with it. The packet's done copying. I've got it right here. Now let's get the hell out of here. Uh-oh. I think they felt that. I've secured an exit elevator. It's this way. Come on! blasted. Hey, the gravity gun's back to normal. Well, it was nice while it lasted.
Usually, the second step of our training arcs involves threatening training area. This is the second step in the roller mine training, and true to form, there's the threat. The indestructible roller mines endlessly attack the player in a gated space. The only way to defeat them is to have Alyx convert them, which means there's no way the player can miss the point of the training. Players also like to see the AI characters fight each other, so after reminding the player about Alyx's roller mine hacking talent, we let you sick them on a pack of Combine soldiers. Much the same way that movie effects often utilize different versions of the same model, there are actually three trains that make up the Stalker scene. The first one is the moving train you see arrive at the platform. The one you're in right now is a static interior with lights moving outside of it to give the illusion of motion. The third train is the crash version. It's a tilted, banged up, and totally separate area from the moving version. The transition from moving to crashed is disguised by a brief fade to black.
Or if you're just in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Alyx's reaction to the Stalkers went through a number of iterations. In very early versions, Alyx was frightened by the Stalkers. That didn't work because it didn't fit with Alyx's earlier reactions to Stalkers in the Citadel. We changed it so that she expressed anger at the Stalkers' predicament. Early versions of this new direction failed because Alyx's transition from generally upbeat to blind rage was simply too abrupt. Ultimately, through rewrites and rigorous testing, we found the right tone for the scene, a simmering anger level that was more in tune with the situation.
It looks like you saved our lives again. What's that? Oh my god. Brace yourself!
We wanted the crash train car to be very disorienting. In early tests, though, players felt that it was too confusing and too hard to navigate. That feedback prompted us to tone it down. By rearranging some of the geometry, we were able to create a banged up, tilted environment that still offered a relatively unobstructed path to Alyx.